Right. So thanks everyone for coming out tonight and coming to this talk. And thanks to Eric as well for agreeing to just graciously give us your time to talk about your journey into directing indie short film and like your expertise on that as you've gone through your film, The Other Side. So we're just kind of curious to hear about your journey into that and like what got you interested in the first place and like anything, evolving through that process of like writing and directing.
Tight, tight. Well, thank you guys for having me, and thank you everybody for showing up on a Thursday evening. Happy Friday Eve. I I was just saying before, I can run my mouth a little bit, so I'm gonna run my mouth a little bit and kind of just talk to how this project that I'm working on came to be, and give a little background info just to how I got into the entertainment industry, how this story came about, and then leave some time for questions and all that good stuff. But seriously, though, thank you guys for having me, and thank you everyone for showing up. It's always a pleasure to talk indie filmmaking, whether it's animation, whether it's live action, especially in this climate that we're in right now, where on in every industry, not just in entertainment, but like there's a consolidation of power, a consolidation of wealth, a consolidation of all these different things. And I think a lot of normal people feel squeezed out, especially within creative industries where we're so reliant on people with money. So just to be getting together and creating community and talking about alternate ways to get our art out there, I think that's super important. So shout out everybody for that. So my background, how I got into entertainment, I'm still fairly new in animation and learning a bunch of things. My background is as a screenwriter. I started, bear with me, y'all. I'm about to run my mouth a little bit. So like I was when I was in college, I went to Cal Berkeley and I went there as a football player. And a lot of times when you're a football player, rightfully so, a lot of people don't think you have much brains and they just kind of put you in classes to get you passed by. And my counselor put me in a ethnic studies course that was supposed to be hella easy. She was like, "Oh, you just watch a movie once a week and write a couple essays. It's chill." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, that sounds cool." And the course was called Race and Ethnicity in Contemporary American Cinema. And it was taught by this professor named Ray Tejas, who was a documentary filmmaker, had worked for National Geographic, had had some stuff at Sundance. I didn't know none of this. I was just like, whatever, I'm taking this class. And he gave us an option where basically for your midterm or for your final, you would write a paper, like most classes, or you could pitch him a documentary film idea. And if it seemed like an interesting story and it seemed doable, you would do that instead. And I had no filmmaking background. I like keep it lit, barely even watched movies growing up. I was just like watching YouTube or listening to music. But I was like, I mean, I write enough essays. Like, sure, I would rather try and make a movie. And so I pitched him this idea about the Cal football team, which I was a part of at the time. And just like, I didn't even really have a fluid idea at the moment. I was just like, I don't know, like, I want to do something about Cal football, about how local athletes and particularly black athletes weren't getting on the team. And so he was like, yeah, that sounds dope. And through that process, kind of opened my eyes to one, just the basics of filmmaking, but that also how much fun it is to tell stories and how much I really enjoy storytelling. So I got to connect with my teammates, a bunch of former teammates that I looked up to growing up. I like learned the very basics of framing, so like rule of thirds and like headroom, and like I could even, if I have it here, I have some clips. Y'all can see like how bad it really was. It was my first film, but like I didn't know what headroom was, and I also didn't know about lighting. So like everybody is like this, like their foreheads cut off. There's hella like raccoon eyes, shadows underneath. I was just, just messing around. Let me see if I can pull something up here as I talk about it. I'm gonna share a screen. I'm gonna share my desktop. Okay, so this is like some of the clips here. You can see like basic stuff, but like there was no good lighting there. All this stuff I pulled from YouTube, like unlicensed. So here we go, another perfect clip here where there's just like raccoon eyes and big old shadows, and no one is lit correctly. All the stuff that like as you get into professional filmmaking, you're like watching it now, I'm like, ooh, that's cringy. But I didn't know. I was just having fun, and so I produced this film. And then after producing the film, it won a research award on campus. And and I had a lot of fun doing it. And so my professor kind of like encouraged me, like, you have a natural rhythm, you have a natural understanding of the rhythm of story. Maybe not a natural understanding of how to light or frame a shot, but you like understand the rhythm of story. And he asked me if I would ever be interested in working in the entertainment industry. I was like, yeah, that sounds tight. Oh shit, you can see the watermark images, Getty images, all that. So let me stop sharing before I embarrass myself. I'll share more stuff later. But so it was through that his son, who was living down in LA and was working in music videos and commercials. He was like shooting videos for Nipsey Hussle, YG, was doing lots of Pepsi stuff. He had just moved back up to the Bay and he was working on a short film. And so he asked if I could come PA. And so it was just through working on short film sets up here in the Bay, going to different commercials, music video sets, and literally just, grabbing coffee, holding the light here and there. But like I got to learn about the entertainment industry. I got to learn really the biggest lesson I learned was that I actually hate being on live action sets. I was like, this sucks. I don't like it at all. I felt like a glorified construction worker. And it was like the only people that seemed like they were having fun were the director, the actors, the DP, maybe like the head lighting artist, the people doing creative stuff. But a lot of the people on set, were building stuff. And like, what do they say? Hurry up and wait. And so the advice I got after people were asking me, like, oh, do you like this? And I was like, hell no, nah, I don't like this at all. They're like, well, if you know you like creativity, if you know you like story, and you know you want to direct one day, then you need to write. And I feel like that was the best advice I ever got. Not, and it came from a live action background, but I think that applies for animation, period. Because if you want to direct film, whether it's animation, whether it's live action, any form of medium, story is key no matter what, right? People will take something that maybe isn't as visually appealing, but has a great story before they take the beautiful thing with a whack story. It happens all the time, right? And if you know story, then you can be intentional with your creative choices. And you'll work with people who are masters of their craft and they'll help you to build to that point. And so I got that advice and I was like, all right, I'm gonna write then. And I just like started to try and teach myself how to the screenplay, the screenwriting format. I bought Final Draft, which was hella expensive for no reason. And I kept working with my professor's son and just kind of like he was giving me feedback. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing, but the more I kept working with him, the more he kind of trusted my story sense. And there was this one particular story that we had come across. It was based on a true story. It was like a scandal that had happened within the Oakland Police Department. If y'all had ever seen that movie Training Day with Denzel Washington, basically this was like the real life Training Day, and it happened kind of how it also happened in LA with Ramparts. It was a similar thing up here in Oakland, and they were called the Riders. It was like a gang within the Oakland Police Department. So we were like, damn, this is crazy. And so we had like come up with this idea of like pitching a television show, like a short one season drama around this scandal. And so I just did hella research, put stuff together, pitched it to him, and he was like, damn, this is tight. And me and him kind of started writing this script together. And so that's how I learned how to write, was just working with him and just literally by doing, just typing up a draft. He would type up a draft, we would get notes, and we would just kind of roll like that. And we kept doing that. We kept cranking out scripts and eventually started putting them out into different writing competitions, different film festivals. Festivals have like those best script or best screenplay categories. So we just started putting stuff out there and eventually started to get some traction, started to gain some awards, and was fortunate enough that we got into this media market where you got to pitch to different networks. And so we were taking our script, we were taking our pitch deck, and we were pitching to like Warner Brothers, we were pitching to FX, and this was like pre-COVID. So back when FX was like still buying stuff, like I think Reservation Dogs was had just got on the air, Atlanta was still hot, like they were taking a lot of new stuff, unlike the industry is now. And so we were hella juiced, right? We were pitching to all these different networks. We were getting offered different things. We had a meeting with a manager from 3 Arts and ended up signing with them. And the whole time I'm like, I'm only like a year or two out of school, so I'm like, oh yeah, it's good. I'm finna be rich, not knowing that that's not the case at all. So the what ended up happening is with this script, we had a ton of meetings, which was great, right? Networking is amazing, but nothing happened. No one bought the script, right? We went up for a bunch of staffing positions on different writers' rooms for different TV shows, and either didn't get picked or the one that we ended up getting picked for, which is supposed to be a reboot of New York Undercover, that show from the 90s, if y'all are familiar, ended up getting canceled because the showrunner was on some creepy shit. Sorry, I swore on some creepy stuff. And so it was like, it was great to get the exposure, but nothing like substantial really that at least I felt how I felt at the time. Nothing substantial happened from it, right? Like I got a manager, but I didn't get any, my show didn't get made. I was having all these meetings, but I didn't get staffed, right? And so I was feeling a little frustrated. I was feeling a little, not necessarily jaded, but just kind of like, okay, let me pivot, let me take a step back. And I've been having these meetings for a few years. I've been writing scripts and didn't get the traction that I wanted. And the whole time I was trying to write stuff that I felt like would be palatable for the industry. And a lot of the stuff that I really felt passionate about, I wasn't like shelving it. It wasn't on the top of my mind, right? Like, be honest, on top of my mind was like, I'm trying to get staffed, I'm trying to get paid, I'm trying to do the thing. And I was shelving a lot of the stuff that I didn't think was necessarily marketable. And there was this one story in particular that me and my brother, who I wasn't co-writing with, he wasn't a rep writer. It was just my homie that I grew up with. We have a nephew whose dad passed away when he was like super young, and so before he got the chance to get to know his dad, and we had always been looking at our nephew grow up, and we were thinking of this question of how do you miss someone you never knew? And the way I like to approach writing and story and everything is to start from a song or to start from a question that presents a feeling. And then the goal is to try and craft a story, to try and craft a movie, try and craft a show that matches that feeling I get when I hear that song or when I see that question presented, right? And so from that question of how do you miss someone you never knew, we wrote out this script about this boy whose father passed away and who is trying to find the spirit of his dad. And so we wrote this script out that we knew was not marketable in a, like in a mainstream sense at least, but more just was a story we wanted to do and that we wanted to make as an animation. My I as I mentioned before, hadn't worked in animation up to that point. I had worked in documentary. I had worked a lot as a screenwriter, but never specifically in animation. But the way I kind of approached it was like, animation is not a genre, it's a medium, it's a tool for storytelling. And you can tell a bunch of different types of stories through animation, similar to live action. So I was just approaching it from a screenwriting standpoint. So we wrote this longer script, and then we also took one story out of that longer script that we could make almost as a prequel to that story. And this is my bad, y'all. I told y'all I can ramble, but this is more where it gets to like the actual kind of independent community that we've built in the animation world around this project. And so from that script, we took it out. We wrote a draft, a short film that was about 10 pages long that we felt super confident about. And we were kind of back to square one. We was like, all right, we got this script. Now what the hell do we do? And I was at the San Francisco Film Festival, and I was kind of just walking around talking to different people. Everybody asked, "What you working on? What you doing? What's this? Blah blah blah." And so I was telling people that, "Oh, I'm working on this animated film," even though I wasn't. I had just written something. I wasn't working on shit. But I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm working on this animated film," and got connected with with a homie who was working over at Pixar at the time, named Theo Hollinsworth, and got his email, sent him over the script. He liked the story, and that was kind of the first addition to the team. We finally had one other person who was down with the story. And so from there, we kind of just slowly built up the team block by block by just looking at the pipeline of what it takes to make an animated film and just starting from there. So we had a script, we got a producer, and then we knew like, okay, we need to get storyboards. We need to make an animatic. Well, how do we attract people? So first we decided we need character concept. And so what we came up with first things first, before we had any art, before we had anything. And if you or yourself are an artist, then that's amazing. You can skip this part. But we didn't necessarily feel like our paintings were up to that point. So we put together this pitch deck. This was the first pitch deck we ever made like 4 years ago. And it was just screenshots from other films that we felt tonally were similar to our story, but not necessarily our visual style, and just kind of communicated basic stuff. So we had the name of the film, both of us up there. We had our log line, and we just pulled hella clips from different animes that looked like they kind of had something to do with the story. Loosely went through our story beats, had stuff from Soul, Spider-Verse in there, different screenshots of stuff that basically we just tried to make a mood board, like what you would see if you ever watch those behind the scenes of like Pixar directors, DreamWorks directors, or any types of directors. Usually they make a mood board that gives off the tone and the vibe of the film, even if it's not necessarily the 100% visual style. So that's what we did, and we took this pitch deck and we tapped in with a couple artists through the network of people we knew through the homie Theo at Pixar, but then also going to some different animation conferences. And our goal was basically to flip. We had small goals each step of the way. First goal, take this pitch deck and flip every page into our own original concept art. And we had like the tiniest little budget, like literally when I'm saying tiny, I mean like we had like literally a couple $1,000s. And we was like, if we can just get two artists that are down, who rock with the story, we can pay them a little bit for their time, we can make something. So we took this pitch deck and we turned it into, and let me know if can you guys still see my screen? Awesome, awesome. Okay, so then we took that and we turned it into this, which again, for some of the folks who are in the call who have seen, like, who are working on the film, y'all know, like, this isn't necessarily even our visual style now, anyways, but it was more just like a starting point. So we took all that stuff that was other films, we got two artists who were down, and we came with our own concept art. So this is all based off of pictures I had taken, rough boards I had done, and then we started to get other board artists and we just started to paint this out. So we had our own super rough concept art that was just supposed to give a vibe, an idea of the story. So y'all see we had that same mood board, but now it was with our own unique character designs, some of our own unique paintings and backgrounds, still going through the story beats. And then we took this pitch deck and we went to Afro Animation Summit in Burbank. We went to like all the animation summits that we could go to that were affordable. And we was just like, bro, we are finna talk to anyone who is a storyboard artist. And we was just like, boom, what's up? You want to work on this? Showing them on the phone, showing them on the iPad, clicking through our slide deck. I would show them the script if they were interested. And we were able to get three, that's not three storyboard artists who were down to work on the script. And then from there, boom, to the next step, right? I had the script shot listed out. We worked with these board artists, came up with different storyboards through their network, got some more storyboard artists, and like spent a year and just boarded the whole film out so that we had a full animatic. Once we had that full animatic, we went back and met with some new character artists to get like updated concept art that more reflected our actual the story that we were going for. And so then that turned into this, which is the more accurate representation of what our characters look like and what the style of our film looks like. So then we had full animatic character designs. Now we're just going to go to the next step. We need character modelers. Through that network, went back to Afro Animation with a better pitch deck, better animatic, got people who know how to model. Started modeling out these characters in a 3D environment. Also started modeling out 3D sets. And then next step, getting a rig artist. Taking each step of the way, just building it block by block by block. And with every artist that we knew, trying to use that network and go to as many summits as possible to just slowly expand the team, and get people excited about the story and people who genuinely believe in the story, genuinely believe in us as a community, and just slowly build from there and from there. So it's basically just a constant cycle of we have this, up it to the next level, take that, get more people, up it to the next level, take that, get more people, and at the same time, taking what we have to fundraisers to try and raise funding, to trying to get grants, trying to get different people who are like philanthropists to, invest in us. And mostly what it's been about is just connecting with other artists, not necessarily trying to rely on big money, but definitely trying to use this to network and get some money too, which we've been able to raise some funds for. So that's really kind of been like the main process behind the film, is just slowly building it up bit by bit by bit, starting with a pitch deck that's doable, even if it's not our art, just stuff from films people know. And then taking that and working with artists to get it to a style for us. And then taking that to board it out. And then to get 3D models and to layout, and just slowly, bit by bit. I mean, it's a long process and it definitely takes patience. But I think one of the things that I like about animation, and especially in the indie world, if you have the patience for it, is as a filmmaker, as a director, you really know your story. Like, you're gonna sit with this for hella long, right? And the more people you get, you're not getting people who are just like, man, I just want the check, right? You're getting people who genuinely believe in your story, in your vision, and you're creating a community. You're creating your own little network of artists that can work outside of the industry. And at a time when everybody, people who have been in the industry for 20 plus years, are complaining that it's hard to get a job, I do think it's so important that we not put our worth as artists, we don't get our worth tied to these corporations that, quite frankly, are just trying to feed shareholders at the end of the day, right? All of our favorite big animation studios, at least in the US and like in the West, are corporations at the end of the day, right? And they have shareholders, they have bottom lines. Oh, my voice is cracked. They have bottom lines, they have profits to reach, right? And a lot of times it's like that old saying, right? Like, art and business are kind of opposing forces. And I think we are definitely seeing that right now in the animation industry. And that can be frustrating, that can be sad, but I do think it's a unique opportunity for artists to take control and create our own things, create our own paths, similar to probably what a lot of our favorite artists have done in the past to create some of the most legendary works there is. I'm not trying to say this is going to be that. I mean, I believe in the story. I definitely think that, but I'm more just me for this community of people who are interested in animation, who are interested in independent filmmaking. That's the path we've been taking, and one that I think, at least for me, has been very rewarding and very cool to just build this community of tight, dope artists. Let me stop sharing real quick because I've been blabbering for a minute, and I promised I wouldn't blabber too long. And if there are other questions that you guys want to hit, let me know. But yeah, that's kind of the general intro into the project that we're working on and how we got to this point.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, it was like interesting to hear about like the start because I know you kind of brought me in and I was helping you out for like a season, but it was like super interesting to hear how like you started with like documentary too. And like you didn't even mean to. That's like really fun. Um some other questions, like I think you were sort of touching on it, but one I was like wanting to ask was like, what do you look for in a collaborator? Like when you were going to these summits, like, what do you like in terms of like skill set or just even like as a person, like what do you kind of look for?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think at first, and this is something that we've learned, so my answer now will be different than what it was before. I think, and I've been super fortunate that I've come across just super dope, supportive people who like are hella experienced, but also are down for the cause. But at first, if I'm being honest, like at first I was like, oh shit, just anybody who
Hmm.
want to work. Like, I don't know. If someone was like, I'm down, I'm like, bet, it's you. Let's go, let's rock. You know what I mean? Which to an extent you gotta kind of have some of that when you're, especially when you're just starting out, because it's like I think everyone should be aware that if you're asking someone to donate their time, like they don't have to do that, right? And you need to understand that this is, you're not their boss. You They don't owe anything to you, right? It's they're we so I was trying to be cognizant of that. And so at first I was really just like, shoot, anybody that wants to help, I'm down with. But then I think as we started going through and got connected with some people who had some experience, who were really mentoring us, and we had worked with different artists. One of the things we work for, and I think the most important thing that we look for, is just someone who's true to their word. Because since this is something where you're not their boss and they don't necessarily owe you, you also don't want to be in a position where people are holding that over you, right? If someone says, I got you, I can do this one thing, then you want to make sure that they can actually follow through on that one thing, right? And so I think it's a two-way street. You shouldn't be asking people to do an unreasonable amount of stuff. I think even if you're paying someone, you shouldn't be doing that. Just in general, we should just have respect for each other, but especially in this situation. But then also on the flip side, you want to look for people who can follow up on their word. And so I think a good way to test that, especially if you don't know people, is start out small. Let's say you are trying to get a concept artist to help you out with one thing. Don't ask, oh, okay, I got this pitch deck that's 15 pages long. Can you flip over every page and give me 15? Like, nah, it'd be like, hey, do you think you might be able to help me out with this one painting? Okay, you're down. Maybe you can help me out with this another one. Do you know anyone else who might be able to come in and help out? Or if you're working with a storyboard artist, don't just throw 200 shots at them and be like, go to work. Be like, hey, what works for you? Would you be down to help out with maybe a couple shots here and there, a couple shots there, so that you're respectful of their time? And then also, I think something we did that was very helpful was rather than just trying, and I forgot to say this before, but rather than just go straight to try and get artists, what we did was we tried to get people with industry with industry experience to come in as mentors, not to necessarily work on the stuff, but who could help and teach people so that there would be something beneficial for somebody who's maybe younger and more green coming in, right? So then it's like, okay, maybe you don't have this budget right now, but I'm learning from someone who has a lot of game and a lot of experience. So this is a learning experience for them. So, right. So there's somebody like for example, and I just saw you hopped in the track, like the homie Dre, who has a bunch of experience and had worked at all these major studios, right? But is also a hella chill dude. Somebody who is down to mentor younger artists, right? That's more, I think, a good way to come about it, especially if you're trying to build something up from the start, is like keeping in mind this is an exchange and like what would be beneficial for someone who's younger, who's more green, who's trying to get something out of it to help you out. If you can get some people who can maybe offer them some game, then there's more of a draw for them to want to come in. They'll probably want to also do more work. And it's just you're helping to grow that community right now because it's each one teach one. Now that person has more game and they can help grow this community that you're trying to build.
That's awesome, like super insightful. Like I feel like it applies to so many people who are trying to enter the industry or have been into the industry, but like still kind of like want to start their own independent films or even pilots as well. I know you mentioned earlier about like going to places like the Afro Summit and other locations. Like, so like, is there places or like even communities online that you recommend?
Mhm.
Like when it comes to like getting those connections in?
Yeah. So I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I'm not hella online, so I'm not as tapped in with those online spaces. Um, yeah, I wish I could answer that better. I'm not as tapped in with those online spaces to know like the exact different lanes. For me, and at least I'm sure there are dope online spaces, but I think in general, the more you can have like actual FaceTime, the better, because then people can feel your energy and really feel your vibe and feel your passion, and you can do the same for other people. And so, like, if you can meet someone at least in person and then transfer that over to digital or online, I think that's always the best way to go because, I mean, making a film in general, especially animation, is like an impossible task, right? It's even to make a terrible film, like the worst film we can think of is it's a miracle that that even got made because it's so hard to make it. So when you're going into a project that's this hard, you really do need people you can trust, right? Like I don't want to say it's like war, but like a lot of people would say, oh, it's kind of like war. Like you need somebody on your side that you feel like has your back, that you feel like you can trust, and they need to feel like they trust you as well. Because I mean, especially if you're in a position where you're the leader, you're director, you're leader of a department or whatever, it's your vision, right? So people need to trust that the way you're guiding them, that your vision is gonna make their work look good. And I think as best as possible, coming like meeting someone in person is the best way to do that. But I would be curious if anybody does know, drop it in the chat, any like good online communities that that people use and that people feel like is a good space for to collaborate, that would be dope to know.
Yeah. Shailene mentioned in the chat that Lightbox Expo. That's a good place as well. That's like a good
Mm-hmm.
place to get like everybody from like all backgrounds in the animation industry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I still myself haven't been to Lightbox, but I only hear dope things about it. The one thing I will say, going back to Afro animation, and I haven't been the past couple years, but there's other summits like it. I think the cool thing about that was cool about Afro animation when we had went a few years ago was that it wasn't too crowded, right? And so it allowed you to be more intimate and allowed you to connect with people in a way that like I haven't been to Lightbox, but like for example, we were at Comic-Con in San Diego a couple years ago, and I know it's like apples to oranges, but like Comic-Con was like hell of people, right? And it's a lot harder to network and to make genuine connections, I would say, just because there's like literally there's a freaking city inside of that convention center, right? Versus at Afro Animation, it felt much more calm and chill, and there wasn't as much of a separation between industry people and I have this resume and people starting out. It was like everybody's on this same floor. There's only like a couple places to go. Everyone's chopping it up. I haven't been the past couple years, so I can't speak to how it is now. I'm not as tapped in, but I think small expos do have a lot of value that I think sometimes we overlook. It's definitely good to go to the big ones as well too, but I think if you can hit a small one, especially if you know you're trying to get an indie project off the ground, I think not necessarily starting small, but trying to hit one small one along with one big one is always a good route to go because then you can just have more genuine conversations.
That's awesome. So we do have a question from the chat from Shailene. So their question is, what was one of the biggest learning curves you had to overcome in directing? The other side, and what helped you overcome it?
Mhm. Shout out Shailene. Um, what is one of the biggest learning curves? I'm gonna probably give a long-winded answer, and I'm gonna get to the answer eventually because I'm probably gonna like circle around it as I'm thinking about it. But because I'm constantly learning every step of the way, every time I feel like I've learned something about how animation pipeline works and how our specific pipeline works, I'm like, oh man, I messed up. Or like, oh man, we what? Like, this is like friggin' rocket science. So I am constantly learning that. But I think in general, even though it might sound a little more cliche or whatever, I think, like imposter syndrome, like everybody has in some way, shape, or form, right? Especially if you get in a position where you work with people who are so insanely talented. It's like, who the hell am I to tell you what to do, right? And I think there's almost a I can't even think of the word, my bad, y'all, but it's like an instinct to like say you're working with someone who on paper has a lot more experience than you and they hand something over, it's hard to give notes and it's hard to critique it. And you even hear like a lot of directors talk about if they work with like a big name actor, it's like they feel afraid to give like Leonardo DiCaprio notes. Like they're like, oh no, it was great. But it's like at the end of the day, this isn't their movie. This is you're the director, right? This is your vision. And keeping in mind that when you give someone notes, you're not telling someone that it's bad. You're trying to fit it into a specific vision and they're looking for notes. That's what makes you the director, right? That's what makes a film good is to be able to critique. So I think imposter syndrome was a big thing in like trusting your gut and not just saying, "Oh, yes, thank you so much." It's like knowing what your vision is and being firm in that, but also knowing how to deliver notes and how to be open to critique yourself too. I think that's the biggest thing. If you can be open to critique, then you can make an environment where everyone else is open to critique. But in terms of imposter syndrome, that's something that I think everybody in here probably deals with in some way, shape, or form every day. Even the biggest name people in any industry in the world to some extent have imposter syndrome. But yeah, I would say probably that. Probably that.
Yeah, so relatable. Like no matter what like level you're at in the industry, everybody has some form of imposter syndrome in like different shapes or form. Super agree. Let's
Mhm.
see. So we do have another question from Ron. Their question is, what is your biggest challenge in communicating your vision for the project with all of the artists? And do you feel like it has been come and go frustration, or has the vision changed through the process?
Mhm. Yeah, I don't even know. He said this one from Sora. That just made me smile so much. That's the little one. Okay, in terms of the question, I'll try to answer each one individually. What was your biggest challenge in communicating your vision for the project with all of the artists? There was a couple, I would say. One, like imposter syndrome, being confident enough to communicate what I want, especially if it might be different from what somebody else at first imagined. But also keeping in mind that, and this is something that I think we are doing well as a team with, is that any project should be a collaborative effort, right? And it will change from what you first imagined it being to what we finally see in the end. And I think the hard part is just knowing what changes are benefiting the story versus what changes are actually changing the intent of what you want this project to feel like. And I think that's honestly the biggest job of people in creative leadership is to know what suggestions enhance a story and what suggestions change it because the vision has stayed the same. The story we want to tell has always centered around that question I had said before of how do you miss someone you never knew? And that's kind of been the guiding light. That's kind of been like the North Star that we're constantly working towards. But how it looks, how we're getting there has changed. I mean, at first we were like, this was going to be a hand drawn 2D animation. And that's definitely not what we're doing now, right? But because we're enhancing it. We decided actually going this route will be better for the story. We've changed the ending. The exact script that I had written, if you read the story and you see the film when it eventually comes out, it's not the exact same story, but it's the same vision and it gives you that same feeling. Like it is the tone hasn't changed. The major beats haven't changed, but different actions have changed. And I think it is one of the reasons I feel so confident and happy about the story is because that vision has stayed the same. And that was something that I think maybe I wasn't as clear as what I wanted the art style to look like at first, or maybe I wasn't as clear as like, I don't know what shot 150 should look like yet, but I was clear on the vision and the tone that I wanted to strike with this film. And I do feel like that has stayed consistent and it's only gotten better. So the vision has not changed, even though some things have changed. And I think that just comes down to knowing the story you want to tell and being very clear and firm about that before you step out on this journey, and then being open to what will help you tell that story better.
It's great. Yeah. We have another question. Also, just wanted to put it out there. If any of you guys want to just say it out loud, you could also like raise your hand. That way we don't have to like read your question off if you want or prefer. But we have a question from Haram. So this question is, were there lessons you learned from football that you were able to transfer to your journey as a writer slash director? Really love how you share your journey in a digestible way.
Tight, tight. Thank you. I'm glad that it's digestible because sometimes I'm like, I don't know what the hell I be talking about, man. I just be rambling. Um, were there lessons I learned from football that I was able to transfer to my journey as a writer direct? 100%. I think my first love was football. Like, no question. I didn't grow up in love with film. Like, I like film, but I was like a sports fanatic, specifically football. That was my passion, that was my love. And I even remember like the first Cal football game I went to. It was 2007, Cal versus Tennessee. It was a sold out game of the week. And I remember Deshaun Jackson returned this punt for a touchdown. And I had this moment, like this spark inside of me where I was like, oh, I want to do that. And it was like the first time in my life that I felt like I had a drive and something I was working towards. And that has been a feeling I've carried with me for the rest of my life. Even when I stopped playing football, it's the same feeling I have about this story. So I think football taught me how to have a dream and how to work towards it. And then also to like to embrace challenge and to like, for lack of better words, I don't know how else to put it, but to kind of be a dog, to be like, I'm not afraid of something getting tough. I'm not afraid of things getting hard, and I'm not afraid of competition. Those are things that like I think through football and through playing like competitive sports get me excited. That's like, yeah, nah, I want to compete. I'm cool with it being hard. Like I'm not my confidence isn't in that I am the best filmmaker and the best storyteller because that's not the case. There's a lot of people in this call who are far better artists than me. But what gives me confidence is I'm like, I'm gonna get it done. If I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it, and I'm not afraid of it being hard. And I think that confidence and that desire to want to achieve something and not letting obstacles get in my way that I think came from not I think I know that came from football. So 100% there's a lot of things that transferred over from football to being a writer director. But what I will say is being in film, at least right now, feels a lot more calm than football because there was something about that competition where it was like in football, if you I was a receiver. And so if I went one on one with the DB and that pass got intercepted or he pushed me out of bounds. Like it was a clear winner and loser. It wasn't like I mean people say, oh, like you tried hard. Like, yeah, sure, but like I lost or like I got smacked on my back. Like there was a clear winner and loser. Versus with art, what I think is cool is you can have that same creative drive. You can have that same hunger for competition. But at the end of the day, art is subjective. And it's not, even though we try to make it this battle within our culture, especially within music, right? Like who's better, so and so or so and so. It really is subjective. Like you can't compare the two the same way, and I think that's freeing in a lot of ways. And it's one of the things that makes me confident wanting to create is I'm like, well, shit, I like it. I know somebody else is gonna like it, you know?
Nice. And it looks like we have a question from Jaren.
Yes, good night. It's so good to see you, Eric.
What's
Um,
good?
I'm good. So my question is, when you know a story is working emotionally, but the structure isn't cooperating yet, what do you do first to like fix it? I have like a two-parter.
Okay. So you said like emotionally it's working,
Hmm.
but the structure isn't working?
Yeah, so I'm working on a story right now that's like based on Caribbean folklore.
Hmm.
So it doesn't fit into like what the way a normal story structure would work.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I
It,
know I have it there emotionally, but I still have to break it down in a way that people can understand what's happening and like what's being said.
mhm. I'm gonna ask a couple questions to help answer. Have you already like done like a traditional like beat sheet or things of that nature?
I've done like an outline.
Okay.
I'm still going beat to beat.
Hmm. I would say if you know emotionally, okay, the core is working, I would say pull it out like the different beats. The first thing I would do is like get on the whiteboard with note cards and just blob out the outline, right? Even if you don't think
Right.
it's gonna work, throw the whole thing out there and then pull out the specific beats that you're like, okay, this scene is hitting that emotional tone that I'm like, this scene
Hmm.
is, and like slowly pull those things out and then look at those scenes and say, what about that scene is hitting that emotional core for me? Why is that
Right.
working? And then looking at the other scenes and saying, okay, why is that not working? I think that's a great starting point. And then the biggest thing I would say to do, especially if it's like narrative story that's like
Hmm.
driven by characters, is before doing anything, doing like a full character breakdown that has nothing to do with your story yet. That's kind of just about who these characters are. And so like the kind of process that I usually do is like broken up into three parts, where the first is asking yourself, who is this character at their core, right? So like imagine when they're born into this world, before they have any opinions, before they're corrupted by either side, just naturally, what are some adjectives that could describe this person that doesn't have a moral judgment on it. That's not good or bad. It's not like they're like conniving or they're like um super positive. It's more just like they're energetic, right? They're not like
Right.
super emotional. Maybe they're super thoughtful. And then going to the next question of what's the biggest event that's happened in their life that shaped them for this story, right? So, for example, it would be like if it was like Star Wars, what happened in Luke's life? His uncle and his aunt got killed and he never knew his parents. That's the information you need to know about him to get us into Star Wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like who they are at their core, what's the biggest thing that happened to them, and then you start getting into what do they want in this film? Like overall in this film, external and internally. Externally, what is the thing that they're trying to accomplish? If it's like the Wizard of Oz, she's trying to Bruh, I just forgot the Wizard of Oz. So like whatever it is, like the external goal,
Dorothy's trying to get home.
she's trying to get home. That's the but see that gets to the next one. That's the internal one. So it's like the external
Right.
goal is like the is what is it? The golden something? She gotta get the boots or
To get to the Emerald City, to get to the Wiz, and the
boom.
Wiz is
That's
supposed to get
so
her home.
externally, that's her goal. It's like that's the thing that's driving her actions forward. But
Mm-hmm.
internally, we know that what does that represent? I want to go home, right? So it's knowing those two things. And once you know those two things, this is externally what they're trying to do, and internally what that means, what that represents, then you can know in every scene they're motivated for what pushes that story forward, right? And sometimes the external goal and the internal goal can even be in conflict. They might not even be aware of their internal goal, right? Like their external goal could be, I want to, if they're a supervillain or whatever, I want to blow up the world. And their internal goal could be like, I want a friend, which seems like opposite, but it might be that internal goal that hasn't been fulfilled that is causing them to act out in this other way. So I think like building out that character beat sheet in that way, and that can go for the film, that can go for a scene, that can go for a moment. You can get as granular with that as you
Right.
want. Then you have that for this character, have that for this character, and now you know how they'll act. That's what creates conflict in a story. Because if someone's internal goals are opposed, naturally they're going to clash, right? That's why
Right.
Darth Vader and Luke might clash. That's why X the Joker and Batman might clash, right? It's because
Right.
that what's driving them internally could be in conflict. And so I think
Okay.
that's like the best, those would be my two words of advice. Is like figure out what scenes in your outline after you crash it out are working for that tone, and then like really dive into just the character stuff of like, okay, who is this character? Even if they're like a supernatural being, because I know you said it's like based on
Hmm.
Caribbean folklore, still looking into them that like that. I think spirits have a backstory too. In fact, that can be even more fun than doing human characters sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so crazy you said that because the story is essentially about Moko Jumbi. So,
Uh, and I figured because you said like it tonally is working, but it might be a little weird to do, right?
yeah, so I'm trying to figure out how to make it make sense. Okay. And then
Mhm.
my other part of the question was, how do you know to trust your story? Like, how do you know when you're ready to like move forward to that next phase and you're
Mhm.
not just doing another draft and another draft and another draft?
It's a kind of like before, it's there's always that little worry of like, shit, is it working? But I think you
Hmm.
get to a point where when you're writing it, when you get to a point that you're like, I like this. I like this. Obviously, I could pick this apart all day, but like I'm feeling this. That's when I
Hmm.
think it's a great time to start sharing it with other people and getting that notes and getting it tore apart. You know what I mean? But once you have a story that you're like, I ain't gonna lie, I'm kind of feeling this thing. I think that's when
Okay.
it's good to share it out. And then obviously, once you share it out, if you start to get a lot of positive reactions around it, like don't doubt yourself. You know what I mean? It can obviously always get better. No one's
Hmm.
ever gonna be like, this story was the most perfect movie, has flaws. But when you've created something that you enjoy, I think that's That's the golden ticket right there.
Okay. Thank you. That was so helpful.
I hope it was helpful. I'm excited to see that story. I'm excited to hear about that.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah, like now you got me really hooked. Like I want to see this right now.
Right, right.
Yeah, oh
That's why
my
we got
God.
this independent community because we got to help
Eh.
them see
Coming,
these
it's
things.
coming.
All right, it looks like we have another question from Hara. Yes.
Yes. Hi. Um, I so actually I saw about this meeting from another community. And I'm so glad that I was able to come here. And I looked up your film, Eric, through your in this Instagram. Sorry, I'm like nervous.
Oh no.
Um, and like I noticed like at first like I didn't see like images of art, but then the first post that that stood out for me was the one with what's her name? The Nor Soul, the piano player.
Oh, with Nare. Yeah,
Nara? Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I was like curious, like what made you choose like piano for um the music for
Mhm.
the film. I'm not sure if there's like other instruments you use, like, but yeah, just like curious about the process.
That's actually a great question because music is a huge inspiration for me in the writing process. I think I had said before, like I actually love music. I think I consume more music than I actually consume film. Like I love music, and so when we sat down to write this story, like I think I said before, like our guiding light was that question: How do you miss someone you never knew? And along with that, it was also piano pieces. So like from the jump, what the soundtrack we were playing when we were writing this were piano scores. And they were piano scores by a couple composers specifically. So one of them was like Joe Hisaishi, who was like the main composer for Studio Ghibli. We also played a lot of like different Korean piano composers and a lot of like old, maybe contemporary like black jazz, like especially like old school Harlem jazz, but like really that slow, deliberate, patient piano is just like for me, I love the piano and I think that gets me the most emotional. And so from the jump, we knew we wanted this to be piano driven because that's what we were hearing as we were writing. That's literally we were writing to the rhythm of a lot of piano scores. And what's funny about Nare is she I watch a lot of YouTube and she is a YouTuber and has this whole channel around like piano and like learning piano and learning classical music for like people who are just getting into it. And she had this after I had written the script before we had done anything, even when we was just with that pitch deck, she released this video talking about the magic of Studio Ghibli scores. And like she broke down like why Studio Ghibli sounds are so unique and so emotional. And she like recreated Western classical music in the Studio Ghibli sound. And I was like, yo, this is so tight. And I remember saying, like, yo, if I ever get to make a film, like an animated film, she's gonna be my composer. And so then obviously once we started really getting into it, she was on my mind from like day one, but we just wanted to kind of be patient. Like we said, we were building up that pitch deck, we were getting our art, we were getting our stuff together. And then eventually we got to the point where we were like, I feel like she would mess with it. And so we asked one of the homies who worked at Pixar. I wrote up an email and I literally was like, bro, can you just copy and paste this so it says at Pixar so that she'll reply? And so we typed up this email and the homie at Pixar sent it. And sure enough, she hit back. She was like, okay, what's up? Let's talk. And then she's just so dope, so genuine. We hopped on a Zoom, we explained the story to her. And kind of similar as what we were talking about before, we're recruiting new artists, tried to position it in a way where it was something that could be beneficial for her. She had scored on Boss Baby 2 with Hans Zimmer as like an assistant score, but she hasn't been in film as much as she, at least at the time, said she wanted to. And she was looking for new opportunities to that. So we were like, we can give you an opportunity to be the lead composer. You can craft the style as it works with the visuals because we've already been writing to your style and like basically put it in a position where it's like, we can try and get you a live orchestra to do this thing and she was down, and so we've been working with her ever since. And yeah, music has been like a huge, big, big part of the writing process, of the animation process. I even heard there's this director out of Japan. I forget his name, and even if I knew it, I would probably butcher it right now. Who he for one of his films, he had been working with this like J-pop rock group for a couple of his films, and for the newest film he was going to do at the time, he wrote out the script, and before they even got into storyboarding or animation, because typically the score comes at the end of the film, as soon as the script was done, he sent the script over to the composer and was like, "Can you make just one song based on how this script made you feel?" And then he used that song every step of the pipeline, every step of the process. So like storyboard artists listen to it, concept artists listen to it, painters, animators, just so they could really understand tone. Because there's something about music and sonic sounds that I think gets us in an emotional state better than words can. And so like, yeah, the music from the jump, that was like hella important for us.
Thank you. One thing I also wanted to mention, like, I think you mentioned how you took inspiration from like Spider-Verse and like Saw and other um films, and then like I'm like looking at like your the what is it, the shorts art style, and I love how like um you took like the elements and but still like made it its own thing. It's
Thank you,
really
thank you.
cool. I love the
Very
process.
I'm
Thank you
very
so much.
glad that that's reading, because like I was like, ah shit, I hope we don't make just a reboot of what everybody else has seen. So like, thank you so much. I'm glad that that's reading.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
All right. Yeah, that it's already 8:03, so you just want to be respectful of your time, Eric. But thank you so much for agreeing to come talk to us at VLA. We really appreciate hearing your wisdom from
Thank
your
you guys so
experience and
much.
your journey. We also
Thank you.
wanted to ask if we could take a group photo of everyone. I'm not going to be the one that does it because I am really bad at technology, but Scully's gonna, if that's fine. You don't have to if you don't want to.
I'm with it. I'm with it. I'm
Nice.
all down with it.
All right, cool.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to like do a countdown, like Scully?
Yeah, I'll do a countdown.
Yeah.
Feel free to show like your cameras on, and if not, that's cool too, guys. We're vibing.
Yeah.
Look
All
at
right.
little Sora.
Hey, oh.
Oh.
All right, guys, and the count of three. Ready? One, two, three. All right, we got it. Hey.
Nice. Nice.
Thank you guys so much for bringing me here to talk. And thank you guys, everyone who came in for the talk. Really, I think if we're talking about indie animation, if we're talking about indie filmmaking, it is all about community. So, like, can't believe I didn't say this before. When we're talking about like online spaces, so like VLA, Haram, the other group that you said you heard it from, like, these are all spaces not just to just, have friends, which, yes, it definitely is, but this is also the foundation for creativity, for new stories to come up. Asians in animation, yeah, I've definitely heard of that before actually as well. All these different groups is where the foundation starts. You know what I mean? And if we can learn how to not just network up where we feel like we can only talk to people who have more experience than us, then we can actually start to create some real community and create some dope stuff. So like really thank you guys so much for putting this together, and everyone in here, thank you guys for showing up, and I hope we can all stay in touch and hope to see all your guys' projects as well.
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, go follow the other side on Instagram.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, and we definitely gonna see the short someday for sure.
Oh,
Believe me,
yes.
y'all. It's coming. It's slow, but it's
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
All right, you
True.
guys. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you
hmm
guys so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care. Take
Peace.
care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.